All right, welcome back to another episode of Bosco Talks. Today it is just me. We do not have my dad on this episode. We may do some more of these during the season. A lot of it, growing up, we of course went to the BYU games, watched BYU games, but we didn't really talk BYU football all that much. We would talk a little bit about the games, and if, we brought something up to my dad, we'd talk about it. But even preseason, different things like that, we never really talked about things. Some of that is because my dad still works at BYU, and some of it is that he just focused on us and what we were doing and the sports we were playing. And so, now looking back, it means a lot to me that that was never the vocal point. Um, and he was always more interested in what we were doing than, talking about these things. So, I thought it would be better to, when we're talking about kind of the current season or the football players, to just have me on and talk things through, kind of share some of my thoughts, my opinions from the outside. Again, I haven't talked to my dad about any of this. A lot of it comes from talking with my father in law, who knows a ton about it, studies a lot about it. I should have had him on. He would give a much better breakdown than what I'm going to do here. But it's fun that the football season is here. You can kind of feel it coming. And by the time this episode comes out, we'll be just a few days away, 5, 6 days away from opening night for BYU. So we'll talk a little bit about the BYU game or the BYU team this year, the schedule, and then I'll share some fun stories about growing up with my dad, some different things. First, I got to shout out my boy Brady Barrett. He owns this company, Deliberate Wellness. If you're in Utah County, it's a top-notch wellness place. You can find it on Instagram. You could search it online. They have all kinds of things: saunas, cold tubs, cryotherapy. Um, they do IVs. Just they kind of do it all. So go check them out, um, and you'll have a great time. All right, so let's get into it with the BYU team. So there's a lot of new faces, and of course now that they've come out and said that Bear Bachmeier is QB1, which is exciting for him and I think for fans just knowing who the QB is going to be. I think sometimes going into the season there's a clear number one, and this year was kind of unknown with everything with Jake, and I think Jake's going to have a great year at Tulane. And we're gonna definitely miss him. He's a gamer. He's just a winner. And last year was so much fun. That's one of the most fun BYU years I remember ever. So we had some awesome games this last year, but I do think the team is stacked this year. Our defense is all coming back. Of course, there's some unknown with Bear being a true freshman, but I think that he'll come in. He has the confidence to be really good. So I'm excited for him to kind of show what he has. And, we have a pretty favorable schedule, especially the first couple games. By no means are all these teams cakewalks, but, Portland State, we should be able to beat. Stanford, we should be able to beat. East Carolina should be winnable games. We'll get into that in a second. We'll go through some players right now. But yeah, Bear is kind of the big point right now because they just announced him as the quarterback. So it's going to be really fun. He has a good offensive line in front of him. We've got some guys on the bench that still probably need to prove themselves, just haven't had a lot of playing time. So hopefully that offensive line can stay healthy. We had Gentry just come in from Michigan, who will be a huge addition to that. But we've got some great running backs. We've got Moa. We've got LJ Martin. So both of those guys could carry the load. Again, it feels this way in college football that the name of the game is staying healthy. If you can stay healthy, then that's a huge thing, especially for these teams that are in the Power Four conferences, because we are getting, really good recruits now. So now it's just how well can they play together? None of these guys have played with Bear except for Tiger, which will also be an awesome addition to the team. Um, but we'll just have to see how they kind of mesh, and it might take a little bit of time. These first games are always hard because you might come out a little slow playing a Portland State. It's not a huge game, and so it kind of takes a second for these guys to get going. But I expect them to come out and put on a good show. It's going to be a lot of fun to see. But we have some great receivers, right? We have Chase Roberts coming back, JoJo Phillips, Parker Kingston, Cody Hagan. I've heard some great things from camp about him, and a lot of what I get my info from is Twitter or different things like that. So I haven't watched any of it. I have no idea actually what is going on, and a lot of it's just what I've heard. So we do have a ton of returning starters, though, offensively and defensively. The big ones, obviously, on the defensive side, Isaiah Glasker, Kelly, huge getting both of those guys back. And then we have a lot of big guys on the front line. Tanuvasa, who was the other, Kirkland, is also, I think he's injured right now, so not sure when he'll be able to play, but both of those are studs. So as long as they can stay healthy, the defense is going to be a problem. Our corners are athletic, they're tall. It almost feels like it's something BYU's never had the last couple of years, what we're seeing on defense. We just have some really good athletes. We've always had good athletes, but especially at the corner position, some of these guys are 6'2", 6'3", and so it's really exciting. These guys are going to be able to prove that they can play with the best of them. So as far as the team goes, a lot of what people would claim as the weaknesses are more unknowns because the guys coming in or playing in those positions are studs. A lot of it's either they played somewhere else last year or they haven't had a lot of playing time. So it'll be fun to see this first game. They'll get a lot of reps from a lot of different people, and we'll kind of see how it goes. But it's going to be awesome. All right, let's go to the game. So we kind of said it. Portland State is the first game on the 30th, and then we have Stanford, then a bye, and then East Carolina. I don't love that we have a bye this early. I would personally rather have the bye after the East Carolina game, getting ready for the Colorado game, or between the Colorado and the West Virginia game. But it is nice to play in East Carolina and then, kind of get back into it, getting ready to go to Colorado, because I think that they're going to be a great team. They have a lot to figure out, of course, like every other team. Last year when we played them in the bowl game, our pass rush was awesome. And if you can get to the quarterback like that, it doesn't matter who your quarterback is, it is tough. We've seen it in the NFL, in college. A big one I think about is Cincinnati when they were playing the Rams in the Super Bowl, or the Bucs against the Chiefs. Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes, both in those games, were being pressured like crazy, and it's just hard to get into a rhythm. It's hard to run your plays. So that's a key for BYU, but also on the defensive side, if we can get a good rush, and I think we have the right people. We have some defensive ends that haven't played a lot, but I'm really excited to see. One of them is Asiata, Ephraim Asiata. I've heard really great things about him and think that he could be a stud. I think he's kind of a combo linebacker, DN type guy. And so it's going to be really fun to see some of these guys come out and play who were injured last year or were maybe freshmen last year sitting behind someone else who got more playing time. So it'll be a lot of fun. So then we have the Colorado game, the West Virginia game. Colorado's away, West Virginia's at home, then Arizona away, and then Utah at home. Obviously, that's a game that everyone has circled. Utah and BYU fans, players, everybody. You want your team to win. I think they're going to have a good team this year. Their defense is always good. They've got Jason Beck there now as their offensive coordinator. And so I think their offense is going to run a lot smoother this year than it did last year. So that's always a tough game no matter what. It doesn't matter who's really good and who's bad. It seems to always be a good game. So that's going to be a tough one. The one game that I'm more nervous about is the Iowa State game, because that Utah game is just so intense. And then a week after, we're playing a really good Iowa State team. Luckily, after that one, we have a bye and then Texas Tech. So that's kind of a really tough. I guess the game after that's TCU too. That's kind of a tough stretch right there for the Cougs, right? We've got Utah, Iowa State, Texas Tech, TCU. So we go home, away, home. It's going to be really interesting to see how they handle those 4 games, because I think the other games are winnable. We could also lose those games, but I think the team's built to have a good season. That is just a tough. I know Iowa State and Texas Tech are both, I think, in the AP top 25 to start the year. I know I've heard good things about TCU coming into this year. So that's going to be kind of a tough go, those 4 games. And then we have Cincinnati, UCF, which again, they're tough games, but I think we have a relatively favorable schedule for the Big 12. We don't play Kansas State or Arizona State. Obviously, we have Iowa State and Texas Tech. So I think it's going to be a really fun year. And I do think that the Cougars have a chance to have a really good year, but it'll be interesting compared to last year where, Jake had those reps and he was able to win us some really close games that other years we may not have won, or other times we may not have won. So it'll be interesting this year if we're put in some of those situations, the way that the offense reacts, especially Bear being a true freshman and being the first ever true freshman in BYU history to start game 1. I've been talking to a lot of people, and there's been a lot of true freshmen that have played, but they haven't started game 1. There's been another quarterback that was in that they were either sharing time with or that they got hurt, and so they came in. So it'll be a really fun year, and it's going to be an interesting one because there's a lot of just unknown with a new quarterback. We kind of talked about it, though. There's a ton of playmakers on the offense. So I don't think that Bear has to do anything extraordinary. I think he can kind of be a game manager. Carson Ryan being there at tight end is a great playmaker. It's always pivotal for a young quarterback to have a really good tight end. And you see it in the NFL. The teams that have really good tight ends tend to do better long term in the not always. I can't say that as always, but usually teams that have really good tight ends that can block and catch the passes do really well. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Hopefully we can get the ball to him quite a bit. We've got some other tight ends coming in the years to come, so it would be fun to kind of stack that and get that going. But that's kind of, I don't really think that we have a lot of weaknesses on this team. I think it's more unknown. That could potentially turn into that, if a lot of guys get injured. Some of those big guys up front, Tanuvasa, if Kirkland gets healthy, stays healthy, but if he can't, that's kind of tough to replace those guys. Will Farron, of course, is coming back, and our punter's coming back. It's all around. I don't really feel like there's a lot of weaknesses, but there's a lot of unknowns. So it'll be a good time to kind of watch them week 1 and just see how they do. For the rest of this episode, this one's not going to be too long. There's a few stories, though, that I kind of wanted to share about myself with my dad, and I'm sure I'll talk about these in other episodes potentially. But just some fun stories that happened growing up. There's a lot of rules and regulations with players and when my dad coached, and so there was a lot of hoops he had to jump through to even get players to come over and eat with us or whatever. But we used to go down to BYU. I remember sitting in the QB room with my dad and the quarterbacks. They have the plays going up on the screen. They're kind of going through what they're doing, and it was so much fun. I just loved doing it. And honestly, growing up, I loved playing football. I didn't love getting hit on the tackle side of it, but flag football, just playing football in general, I just loved doing it. So I love watching football. Of course, I played basketball in high school, and that was kind of my main go-to that I loved playing, but I really did just love football. So growing up, we would, as much as we could, try to be around the players. And I remember my dad got permission for Luke Staley and Brian McDonald to come over, and they came and ate with us. And then we were just in the basement. We were playing, and just feeling so awesome, running and getting tackled by Luke Staley and those guys. It's Luke was a big guy. So it was always fun to, we got around you, we scored a touchdown, and it was such a blast. Another fun story was we would go to the bowl games, and I think my dad was done coaching during this particular one. We were at the Las Vegas Bowl. It was when Fui Vakapuna was there, and I ended up working for Fui Vakapuna when I was at BYU as his student assistant for him. So I have some great memories with Fui and love him to death. And me and my brother were playing. I think they had a family room for the players too, where they had TVs, they had PS2s, and they had college football. So we were playing college football or Madden or whatever it was. And I remember Fui coming up to us, and he's like, "Hey, you guys want to go?" And we kind of looked at him and we're like, you can play after. You can play the winner of this game. And he just busts up laughing because he was kind of doing it like, "Hey, you want to come fight?" Just as a joke. But he always talked to me about that as it was so funny because for us, we were just like, yeah, you could just play next. And for him, he was trying to be kind of the big tough guy. And we were just like, oh yeah, you could play whoever wins this game. So that was a lot of fun. And then the last story that I'm going to share is my dad always goes to golf tournaments. Steve Young has an annual one that he goes to. And so one year he came back, and he always, they usually have things at these golf tournaments that they'll bring home, and it's the chapsticks and all these different things from sponsors. And so I was the only one home, so I was going through some of the stuff, and there was a bag there, and it had an iPad in it, and I was like, wow, that's crazy. They gave you an iPad? That's pretty sweet. And this was, a long time ago, not when everyone had iPads. Now everyone has iPads, and it would be a little bit different. But so I grabbed the iPad out, I open it up, and it has apps on it and everything. And there's a game on there, and it's a Steve Young football game. And I can't exactly remember, but I had kind of heard of this app that was going to come out, just a football game that Steve Young had created. And so I start playing it, and I'm like, this is cool. I can't believe Steve got them all iPads with the game on it. That's amazing. And my dad comes downstairs, and he goes, "Where did you get that iPad?" And I was like, "Oh, it was just in that bag." He's like, "That's Steve Young's iPad. I picked him up for the golf tournament, and he left his bag in the car." And so we always laugh about that because, I was one of the first ones to play Steve Young's game that didn't know much about it. But it was Steve's iPad. And so not everyone got one, but it was a fun thing to be able to experience and then just to joke about. All right, well, that's all I've got for this episode today. Don't forget to go to the social medias, go follow, go let me know in the comments what kind of giveaways you guys want to see. We want to do some fun things. They never made cards of my dad, so I'm thinking of doing some custom football cards of my dad and either giving those away or figuring something out with that. But let me know what kind of other things you'd like to see and what we can get done. And we'll see you guys on the next episode.